Looking for me? Well, come and get me!
Psychonauts 2 starts off with an Inception-like mind heist, though it's one that's brought to life with all of the weirdness and quirkiness of a Double Fine production. The game picks up right where Psychonauts and its VR sequel Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin left off, as the leading agents of the Psychonauts dive into the mind of the arch-antagonist from those two games to seek answers. Of course, this is also time for our hero, the psychic child prodigy and circus runaway that is Rasputin, to come front and center for this mission. It's an excellent opening mission for this game, and it really sets the stage for what is to come through the game's opening hours. Do take the game's opening warnings about dental phobia to heart though, because this is a dive into the world of giant teeth, dental work and more, while trying to follow Dr. Loboto and reveal the shadowy master that has been pulling his strings. However, from that first high-stakes mission, Raz is brought crashing back down to ground. Yes, at the end of the first two games, he was kind of brought into the fold of the Psychonauts, but at the end of the day, he is still just a kid and not a true agent. So he is instead shoveled into the Psychonauts intern program with all of the other kids and adolescents.
In the intern program.
Narratively, that hits a little bit of a reset button on Raz's story. Just as in the first game, he now has to prove himself once again. He has to win over his peers, and there is a slew of new Psychonauts characters who he has to convince that he has worth to. The original Psychonauts had this real 80s kids saving the world vibe, especially as it was set at a remote summer camp, and this tale absolutely feels like the bigger budget follow-up to that adventure. From the opening hours, it does seem to follow in similar footsteps to that first game. Thankfully, it is nowhere near as big of a reset for his mental powers, where the first game drags you through some drawn-out tutorials as Raz first learnt each of his psychic abilities from the Psychonaut teachers that were running this summer camp. Psychonauts 2 does a fairly good job of making you feel pretty powerful from the off. There's no calamity here that strips Raz of his powers, so he has the fundamentals of levitation, telekinesis, psyblast, and pyrokinesis, and the game very quickly shows you the ropes for each of these abilities. There's new psychic abilities to learn later on, to make things like mental connections or projections, but the way that they're introduced doesn't feel quite so tutorial-like or drawn out. From the opening 4 hours or so, the structure of the game immediately feels tighter, but you can clearly see the same framework from the original Psychonauts is still here. This is still a platformer that deals in the broken up and abstract, that twists ideas into surreal, dreamlike worlds that you then have to work out how to navigate and puzzle your way through. Along the way, there's a collectathon vibe with this seemingly never-ending string of 2D figments to grab, and with tags to reunite with emotional baggage, and so on and so forth. There's also plenty of combat to contend with, as these subconscious worlds recognise intruders and try to expel them. The more I think about it now, actually, the more that I reckon Christopher Nolan was a bit of a Psychonauts fan when he was writing Inception. The basic fodder are the sensors, and they return in force, but they're joined by new enemies like the Enabler that shields these enemies and sensors from your attacks, and the Bad Idea that will throw explosive thought bulbs at you, and plenty more inventive creations as well. 15 years on, the controls and combat feel that much tighter, with a more generous auto-aim on Raz's telekinesis, psyblast, and a pyrokinesis that no longer needs you to lock onto a target, but can instead be used to affect an area. The combat can still be pretty tough though if you don't keep enemies at a distance. There's also still a heavy narrative focus that draws it all together, and there's more cutscenes than you can really shake a stick at, to the point where Psychonauts commits one of the cardinal sins of video games, having 2 cutscenes that are separated by the player literally walking about 10 meters in one direction. Still, I can happily forgive that when there is a clear care and thoughtfulness to the story that Psychonauts 2 is telling. There's an engaging tenderness to how it portrays the different personalities of the people whose minds Raz steps into, and the internal demons that they are battling with. As Raz has to reunite the Psychic Six, he finds Compton Boole, a man whose acute anxiety has taken over his life and seen him retreat from the outside world, despite having been one of the founding members of the organisation. And then you have Cassie, whose seclusion comes from her self-control issues and a fracture to her personality. In each case, those worlds are rendered in fantastical fashion, as you would expect. Compton's mind is this bizarre cooking game show in which he is judged by puppet animal renditions of the other Psychonauts, while Cassie's mind sees the different aspects of her personality divided and split apart. As Raz encounters the teacher, one of these aspects, and asks, "Are you the real Cassie?" she pointedly turns the question back on him, and the different fronts that he himself, and pretty much any other person that is alive, would present in different scenarios and to different people. All of the game worlds and characters are rendered in a gorgeous art style, the game now built on Unreal Engine 4. There's a huge amount of range to what the game presents you, even from the 4 levels that I had the opportunity to play, with each mind that Raz steps into feeling unique and showing us more about who the characters are and what their personal struggle is. For the character models, they're clearly higher fidelity, almost looking like they've taken fresh inspiration from claymation, but still having that German expressionist vibe underlying everything. All in all, Psychonauts 2 is shaping up to be a worthy sequel to Double Fine's cult classic original. Many of the fundamentals of that game remain, but there's a new high-stakes mission for the Psychonauts to undertake, and for Raz to save the day as the kid hero of this story once again. And it's being brought together with visuals and refined gameplay that you would hope to find after 15 years and 3 generations of games console. We can't wait to play the rest of this game, with Psychonauts 2 coming out on the 25th of August for Xbox Series XS as the next-gen kind of exclusive, but then also PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, macOS and Linux. And yes, you'll be able to play on PlayStation 5 as well via backward compatibility. That's all for this video, and I hope that you've enjoyed our quick look at Psychonauts 2. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, the usual kind of YouTube things before you go, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!
I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody's help. I can't need anybody's help.
I hope that's not true, because I ask for help all the time.